Hello and welcome. In this video, I'm going to show you a few legal ways to pay less tax or get a larger tax refund. In other words, how to maximize your tax return. Let's start with just a quick rundown on how the tax system works in Australia. So we use a marginal tax rate system. So depending on your taxable income or how much you make, you will pay different amounts of tax, and of course, the amount you pay increases as you make more money. So the first 18,200 is what's known as the tax-free threshold, meaning there's no tax. And then the next 18,200 to the 45,000, you pay 16% or 16 cents for each dollar. And then the next bracket, which you can see here, is 30 cents and then 37 cents. And if you're in that highest bracket, meaning you earn over 190,000, you'd pay 45 cents for each dollar. Now, one of the most common misconceptions is that if you're in this bracket here, and say your taxable income's 140,000, that entire 140,000 gets a 37% tax rate. That is not true. It's a marginal tax system, meaning no matter how much you earn, the first 18,200 has no tax. Then the money from 18,200 to 45,000, that amount has 16 cents for each dollar. And then as you go up, you're paying at that rate. Now, another common misconception is your taxable income is how much you make. That's not true. Your taxable income is equal to your assessable income less allowable deductions. And of course, the deductions is the main thing we'll focus on today, because that's where you can minimize the tax you have to pay the most. So your assessable income includes your salary, if you have a business, any income from that, any investments, bank interest, capital gains. We subtract your allowable deductions from that to get your taxable income, which is where we then calculate the tax. Now, another misconception is deductions means that amount you don't have to pay in tax. So that's not a $40,000 tax offset, meaning you don't have to pay $40,000 that you would have. Instead, it simply decreases your taxable income. The real tax benefit is when we look at those brackets. So with 72,000, you're in this bracket. So originally you had 112,000 and we've taken 40,000 off. So that 40,000 no longer have to pay tax on it, and you would have had to pay in this bracket 30 cents in the dollar, so 30%. So the real tax saving would be $12,000. So I think we've got just about enough of the basics. There is quite a few other things, such as you also pay 2% Medicare levy, and then there's a bunch of other things like your pay-as-you-go withholding, franking credits, low income rebate, but not going to cover any of that. You can look at that yourself, as the main thing we can control is, of course, our allowable deductions. So let's go to some of those common deductions you can do. So these are the most simple ones for people who are employees at jobs. So we have uniform and laundry costs. So if you have a uniform that is required for your job that you had to pay for, it wasn't provided for you. So these uniforms usually have a logo on it, or it's needed for the specific job, such as some nursing scrubs. Then you can claim this amount and any laundry costs as a tax deduction. This does not include business casual or a suit for an office job. Next up, we have work-related tools and equipment. So if you have to purchase tools for your job that, again, you have to pay for, it's not provided. So this could include tools for a tradie or a subscription to software for an office worker, such as Excel. You can claim these as a tax deduction. Next up, we have work-related self-education expenses. This is in relation to education expenses you incur that help you improve your skills in your current job. So it does not include education fees where you are trying to get into a job, such as going to get your real estate license or going to get a bachelor's degree to become an accountant. Because you are not yet in the industry, you do not yet have that job. It has to be an improvement of your skills. So for example, if you were to get your master's, So you already have your bachelor's degree and you're already an accountant, but you get your master's or you get your CPA, then this is an improvement of your skills and therefore can be a tax deduction. This may also apply to like a course that your employer wants you to take and you have to pay for. Anyway, moving on, we have work-related travel expenses. So this includes kilometers you do for work-related travel, but it does not include your regular commute to work. So driving from home to work, you cannot claim that. But if you're going from one job to another job without going home in between, which would mean you had two jobs, you can claim that. Or if you're going on a work trip for your job and you have to commute, say you're going to a conference, you can claim that. Now there's two main methods to claim it. I usually like the cents per kilometer method. It's pretty simple because you just record how many kilometers you traveled. Let's say you had 2,000 work-related travel kilometers. And then you multiply that by the financial year's rate. So in 2024 to 2025, that's 88 cents per kilometer that we can claim. So for 2,000 kilometers at 85 cents, you could have a $1,700 work-related travel expense deduction. One important thing to note is there's a maximum of 5,000 kilometers you can claim. So if you travel more than that, you can't claim more than 5,000 work-related travel kilometers. That is the limit, 5,000. Now there is an alternative method called the logbook method. Again, if you, I won't go over that one, but if you want to have a look, go to the ATO website, which I put in the description, and you can have a more detailed look at all of this stuff, as well as other stuff that's on there. Next up, we have working from home expenses. Again, you have two methods. You have the fixed rate, which I won't focus on in this video, but again, you can go to the website and have a look, or you can just use the actual amounts. So say you work from home and you have expenses such as your internet or your mobile phone costs. You can claim those on your taxes. However, the important thing with this one is you have to claim only the business percentage. So say your phone, you're using 40% for business or for your job, and 60% is just personal. You can only claim 40%. So say your expenses was $400, but you only use it 40% for business. You'd have to times it by 40%, meaning the amount you would claim as a deduction would be 160. Next up, we have donations, a pretty simple one. If you have any donations, you can claim them as a deduction. Try to have receipts just in case you get audited, especially for if the donations are a larger sum of money. Next up, this is a real good one, accountant fees. Now, of course, if your tax is complicated, go see an accountant. They're experts and they can get the best out of your tax return for you. You can take some of this stuff and tell them what deductions you want to claim. But an accountant is a great person to see to do your taxes, and the good part is the fee for seeing your accountant is a tax deduction. So if you spend $400 to see that accountant, that's a $400 tax deduction. And there's many more. These are just some of the main ones. If you want to see these ones in more detail as well as other ones, again, go to that ATO website in the description. Now we're going to move on to some of the more not complicated but less common methods. The first one is superannuation. Superannuation is one of the best tax dodges you can do. So this one is for if you know you're going to have to pay a lot of tax and you want to try to reduce it. So you've already calculated what you think your taxable income is going to be, and it's up pretty high and you want to reduce it. You can do a personal concessional contribution into your superannuation. Now, the benefit of a concessional contribution is you get a tax deduction. So if you contribute $10,000, you get a $10,000 tax deduction. Now, the really important part with this one is, of course, once you contribute the amount, to claim it as a tax deduction. So to tell your accountant to claim it on your tax return or to claim it yourself if you do your own taxes, and also to have a notice of intent from your super fund that you're going to claim this amount as a tax deduction. Otherwise, you're not getting the benefit. So a little bit more on where this benefit lies is, of course, when you claim that tax deduction, you're no longer having to pay that tax. So if that was being taxed at one of these brackets, say 45%, that $10,000 no longer has to pay 45 cents in the dollar, saving you that tax. However, when it enters into the super fund, you pay 15%. That's how super funds work. You pay 15% on money going into it. Unless it's a non-concessional contribution, but that's something else. We're doing concessional contributions here because you get that benefit of a tax deduction. So that $10,000 would also have to pay 15% when it enters. So the real benefit would be the amount you no longer have to pay in tax minus the amount you do have to pay in the super fund now. But if you're in one of these higher brackets, you will have a tax saving. And that saving can be clearly seen by, instead of paying 45 cents in the dollar, you're only paying 15, which is what the super fund pays. So if you're in this bracket, you have a 45 minus 15%, you have a 30% tax saving. If you're in this bracket, it would be a 22% tax saving, and if you're in this bracket, it would be a 15% tax saving. So this is beneficial for those earning over 45,000. Of course, the more you earn, the more beneficial it is. If you earn less than 45,000, don't worry about it. It's not going to be that beneficial because you only would have a 1% tax saving because the tax rate is only 16%. So that's the benefit of doing a personal concessional contribution into super. Keep in mind your personal concessional contributions. So those concessional contributions include the money your employer puts into super for you, so that 11.5%. It also includes any amount you salary sacrifice yourself, as well as any amount you personally put in from your after-tax money and claim a tax deduction on. So you can do this instead, if you like, as a salary sacrifice. It's achieving that same benefit. Or if you don't want to do that, you can do a personal concessional contribution and claim that deduction on your taxes. However, do note there is a cap to how much you can do in the year. So in the 24-25 financial year, the cap is $30,000 for concessional contributions. So like I said, that includes what your employer puts in, any salary sacrifice, or any personal concessional contributions you put in. You can't go over that cap, so keep that in mind. However, there is a carry forward rule if you want to get a bit complicated, and if you do want to put in more than 30,000, you can carry forward unused caps from the last 5 years. However, that's pretty complicated, so I'll let you look into that if you like in more detail. But of course, contributing to super is a huge tax saving and is a very common strategy that is used. The downside, of course, is that money's locked up until you retire. The upside is you pay less tax, you're investing for your retirement, and as you probably know, while you pay 15% when it goes in, once it's in there, it can grow over time, and when you take it out, it is tax-free, which is why super is known as such a good tax dodge. Anyway, next up we have private health insurance. I'll cover this one pretty quickly, but basically, it may be worth getting private health cover so that you don't have to pay the Medicare levy surcharge. So everyone has to pay that 2% Medicare levy on their taxable income, but the Medicare levy surcharge is only payable for people who earn over a certain amount. So if you're single and you earn over $97,000, you pay an additional 1% Medicare levy surcharge. So you can look at this in more detail, but basically if you have to pay this Medicare levy surcharge, it might work out cheaper to get private health insurance, which means you would no longer have to pay it. So something to keep in mind, and of course it's only relevant if you're on a higher income. So we'll go to capital gains next. This is another good strategy to note. Pretty simple one, this one, but you want to try to hold investments. So say you purchase shares for at least 12 months. As under 12 months is a short-term capital gain, you pay that full capital gain tax. But if you hold it more than 12 months, you get a 50% discount, which is a big discount. So basically how capital gains tax works is it's the profit you make on selling shares. So if you buy shares for $400, sell it for $800, you've made $400. And if you've held that less than 12 months, you pay that $400 is all capital gains tax and goes towards your assessable income. But if you've held it more than 12 months, you get a 50% discount. So you only have capital gains of $200. So I've included an example here you can read. If you purchased $1,000 of Apple shares, sold it for $2,000, 6 months later, you'd have $1,000 of capital gains. But if you did that same thing and held it for 13 months before you sold, knowing you'd get that 50% discount, instead of having $1,000 of capital gains, you get yourself a 50% discount, meaning your capital gains tax is only $500. Another thing to note is if you have any capital losses or have had any in the past, they can be carried forward to offset future capital gains. So say you have unused capital losses from prior years of $1,000 and you have $2,000 of capital gains this year, you can offset those gains with that loss, meaning your new gain that is assessable this year is only $1,000. And the final thing I'll cover in this video is rental properties and how you can pay less tax with them. Now, it's pretty well known that rental properties is a great way to save on tax. So the basics of rental properties is, of course, any rent or income from the property is assessable income. So if you have $30,000 of rent, that's assessable income. Say you also had $70,000 from your job, your assessable income total would be $100 plus anything else you have. But the benefit comes from any expenses incurred from this rental property are deductible. So your mortgage repayments, your interest on the loans, the council rates, any repairs you do, your insurance, commission, depreciation are all tax deductions. So you can rack up a huge amount of tax deductions, like over big figures, if you're having a lot of expenses with this rental property. This is why it can be very beneficial with tax to have a negatively geared property, especially if you have a high income. That's why you often see, or I often see people who have rental properties purposely having a net loss on their property. So say they're on a high income of $140,000 and they managed to have a loss on this property. So they might have had a revenue from their rent of $40,000, but they had expenses of $50,000, meaning they lost $10,000. That's effectively a $10,000 deduction or a $10,000 decrease in their taxable income, which of course saves them on tax. So this is very common when, say, an individual chooses to do a bunch of repairs to their property, because not only does this improve the property and increase its value and make it better to live in, but it also decreases the assessable income the property generates, leading to less tax payable. Anyway, to finish this video off, I know this is very, very complicated, and of course taxes in general are very complicated, and to do a detailed video on it, it would go forever. But they're just some of the main strategies that can be used. Of course, see an accountant to help you out. Remember, their fee is a tax deduction. And for more information, consider going to the ATO website where you can learn more. But I hope this video provided you with a bit of an overview on the Australian tax system and a few strategies that people commonly use. Maybe next year I'll make a more detailed version. I kind of made this video last minute when I got the idea, as this was just a quick overview. Anyway, thanks for watching. Please consider liking and subscribing, and I'll see you next time.